Bitcoin, will get there and it will move and it'll move hard, but it tends to sometimes lag gold, or at least on the last couple of cycles. That's what I've observed. As you also know, and I'm sure you'll point out, the ETF approval is a really big deal. I mean, notice how much it bounced just on the rumor. I mean, the ETF approval will bring a lot of money into Bitcoin.
Hey guys, welcome back to Everyday Finance. In this video, Larry Lepard discuss about Bitcoin and gold. Larry Lepard says it's fascinating. Although Bitcoin is not as extensively used, I still view it as a safe haven asset because I believe it to be a distributed non-bearer security or bearer security that is unhackable, still being embraced, which makes it rather unstable. This current era kind of recalls me a lot of the 2018-29 time frame when gold initially began to move, by which I mean gold is widely 8 billion people are spread over the globe, and they are all aware of what gold is, and when geopolitical unrest occurs, erupts, or there is going to be inflation, gold usually smells first, yes, and I remember pretty clearly that during that period Bitcoin didn't begin to move until 2019, whereas gold did, movement until the year 2020. Having said that, when Bitcoin did move, it did so with significant authority and completely outperformed the returns on gold. And as you are aware, and as we have discussed, I think Bitcoin is a better long-term investment, but not everyone can handle the volatility, so it's not for everyone. I have clients that are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they don't want to experience drawdowns of 70%. Therefore, I oversee a fund that includes Bitcoin, silver, and gold. However, the idea is that Bitcoin, will eventually arrive and move. If slowly at first to occasionally lag gold, at least during the past few cycles, is what I've noticed, as I'm sure you're aware. You'll mention how significant the ETF approval is. Notice how much it fluctuated, just on the gossip. I mean, the approval of the ETF will significantly increase Bitcoin's value, and lots of things Larry Lepard discuss, so please watch the video to end and share, subscribe our channel Everyday Finance, thanks.
I'd love to know how many people in Cointelegraph got long Bitcoin and floated that false rumor, but we're setting that aside. It was at 25 or 26, now it's at 28. Yeah, so Ann and I were speaking about this before we got on this recording. It's interesting. Bitcoin, it's not as widely distributed, and I consider it to be a safe haven asset because I think it's a distributed, non-bearer bearer security that can't be messed with, and so I think it's safe haven. But it's still being adopted, and therefore it's relatively volatile. And this period right now reminds me kind of very much of the 2018, 2019 period where gold started moving first. I mean, look, gold is widely distributed around the world. 8 billion people, everyone knows what gold is. And when geopolitical trouble arises or inflation is imminent, gold tends to smell it first. Yeah. And I recall quite clearly in that time frame that gold started moving in the 2019 time frame, and Bitcoin didn't start moving until the 2020 time frame. Now, having said that, when Bitcoin did move, it moved with great authority, and it absolutely crushed the returns on gold. And as you know, and as you and I have discussed, I believe Bitcoin is the faster horse and a better long-term hold, but it's not for everybody because not everybody can tolerate the volatility. I mean, I have clients in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they don't want to have 70% drawdowns. And therefore, I manage a fund that's both gold and silver and Bitcoin. But the point is that Bitcoin, will get there and it will move and it'll move hard, but it tends to sometimes lag gold, or at least on the last couple of cycles. That's what I've observed. As you also know, and I'm sure you'll point out, the ETF approval is a really big deal. I mean, notice how much it bounced just on the rumor. I mean, the ETF approval will bring a lot of money into Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor does an excellent job of making the point that it's very rare that you see an opportunity like this where there's a lot of money that's going to come buy an asset, but it can't buy it today because, in fact, I was just talking to a very, very wealthy individual earlier today. And I said, have you bought Bitcoin? He goes, no, I know I should, and I really want to, but I don't want to get a Trezor. I don't want to do cold storage. I don't trust myself to manage the keys. I don't want to put it on an exchange. I'm just waiting for the ETF. And I thought, okay, yeah. And you know what? I think there are a lot of people who fall into that bucket. So, so that's where kind of Bitcoin is.
Gold and Bitcoin, both are okay. So gold is analog sound money that has been proven to be 5,000 years old. It was also the best form of money in the world until Bitcoin came along. Bitcoin is still less volatile than gold, which is a real advantage for some people who don't want to ride the ups and downs of the cryptocurrency. If you look at the actual characteristics of Bitcoin as money though, and it is being adopted as money, in my opinion, it beats gold on pretty much every front. It's easier to store, transfer, verify, divide, etc. And so I believe that the people who created the Bitcoin network Satoshi was a group of people who later decided to remain silent.
As everybody knows, or most people who've listened to me know, I love them both. Okay, gold is analog sound money, proven 5,000 years old, and it was the best form of money that existed in the world until Bitcoin came along, and it is still less volatile than Bitcoin. And for some people, that's a real advantage. They don't want to ride the up and down cycles within Bitcoin. If you look at the actual characteristics of Bitcoin as money, and it is being adopted as money, in my opinion, it beats gold on just about every front. It's easier to store, it's easier to transfer, it's easier to verify, it's more easy, it's easier to divide, etc. And so I think when the people who set up the Bitcoin network, and I do think Satoshi was a group of people who then decided to go silent. I think I've met a few of them actually, but
wow, well, that's a conversation for another time.
We talk about that. When the Bitcoin network got developed, something important was developed, and sadly, a lot of gold people think, oh, all this crypto stuff is bullshit, and you know what? They're right. All crypto stuff is bullshit except Bitcoin, because what Bitcoin did, what that system does and did, is we created legitimate, provable digital scarcity. And before that time, that had never existed. So this is an invention. It's like when the Wright brothers created an airplane, they created a device that would allow human beings to go up in the air and travel. And, from the Wright brothers to, the Concorde, was a bunch of years, but it was amazing the developments that took place. And you might ask, well, why does digital scarcity matter? Digital scarcity matters because the most important characteristic of sound money is that it's scarce. And until Bitcoin came along, gold was the element in the universe that was most scarce. The supply only grew at 1.5% a year. It was verifiable. I mean, admittedly, you had to sometimes X-ray it so that it didn't have tungsten inside it, and had problems in verifying its purity. But suffice it to say, there was no other element like gold, and that's why 6,000 years of evolution, it became kind of the preeminent form of money. Bitcoin, in my opinion, is really just digital gold with better characteristics. Now, it's not as widely distributed, it's not fully adopted, and there are two, as I've said before, to add credibility to the case, there are two weaknesses or two risks, and even as big a Bitcoin advocate as Lynn will agree to these, and she writes about it in her book. There's the technical risk that in some way the network breaks or fails. I think based on who the core developers are, based on the fact that it's been working for 15 years, based on the technology involved and so on and so forth, I think that risk has gotten to be very small. It was much larger before the block wars, before the hard forks. In the early days, there were some backdoor problems, etc. But I think 15 years in, the network is pretty damn robust, and the risk of technical failure is low. Although that's why I've often said, Greg Foss says, hey, Bitcoin is a CDS on the dollar. And I'm like, that's right. But gold is a CDS on Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin fails, you want to have gold. I think the other risk to Bitcoin is that people just lose interest and it fades away. I mean, money is really what we all agree is the most liquid good, and money has always been a ledger, and Bitcoin is a ledger. And if for some reason people lost interest in it and stopped using it and didn't appreciate the qualities that it had, then okay, well, it would kind of fade away.